JT's can only be found at 7-Eleven.
KTVV, TV 36, Austin. This is News 36 with Rhonda Pennington and Gordon Smith.
Good morning, I'm Sherry Claypool, and welcome to the Midday Report. Making headlines this morning, Governor Mark White has left for Honduras. A fire last night destroyed 6 apartments. And in international news, the Russians say Reagan was too quick to give them the cold shoulder. It was a quiet farewell to Governor Mark White this morning as he left Bergstrom Air Force Base en route to Honduras. Governor White will visit the 400 Texas National Guardsmen who recently went to Honduras to participate in military exercises. But Governor White brought more than just his luggage on board the aircraft. 400 pounds of brisket, 500 pounds of tortillas, and 100 pounds of pinto beans, barbecue sauce, and jalapeno peppers will also be going to Honduras as part of the Texas barbecue to be held for the soldiers. And last night, a group of Texas National Guardsmen spent the night on the Nicaraguan border with Honduras. 450 Spanish-speaking guardsmen are training with the Honduran military and the regular U.S. Army troops using equipment that was flown in from Texas last week. Jim Moore is in Honduras with the Texas Guard and has this report.
The Lone Star has never been so out of place. It is carried through peasant villages on tanks. The Texas National Guard is in Honduras on a military training exercise. But as they were leaving Texas, it sounded more like a vacation trip.
A new experience for me. It's the first time going out of the country.
The Texas Guardsmen boarded their flights without fear of the military tensions in Central America.
Got my suntan oil. I'm ready.
The Sandinistas are also getting ready. A few miles from where the Texas troops are training, Nicaraguan soldiers have just completed a similar exercise of their own. The arrival of Texas troops for Big Pine 3 maneuvers is the latest aggravation of tensions along the Honduran-Nicaraguan border. The military presence is beginning to bother even the pro-American Hondurans.
In hearing some of us speak English, a little old woman with her crutch was walking up the steps of the cathedral. It sounds overly dramatic, but it actually occurred just this way, and turned around and started shouting in Spanish. "You sons of bitches, gringos, what are you doing down here? Why do you send us only soldiers? Why do you send us only tanks? Why don't you send us food? Can't you see that people are hungry?"
But much of the American aid here goes secretly to the Contras. They are rebels trying to overthrow the government of neighboring Nicaragua, and their base camps are located in Honduras. Hondurans are caught in a political trap. They depend on the U.S. for economic and military aid, but they live in a region where there is increasing anti-American sentiment. Opposition parties gain strength by criticizing the U.S. Political rallies can turn into anti-American demonstrations. The Honduran fears are even heard on the University of Texas campus.
Sooner or later, the people of Honduras will take the same road that the other people of Central America have taken.
But the war games continue in a place where war has always seemed so out of place.
Jim Moore for News 36.
From Austin's News Channel, this is the Channel 7 News at noon. Snow and Mark Hanna with weather.
Good afternoon. Mark Hanna is on vacation this week. In the news, Governor Mark White is en route to Honduras to visit Texas National Guardsmen who are participating in war games in that Central American country. The governor left just after 8 o'clock this morning from Bergstrom Air Force Base. Up until now, details of White's trip have been wrapped in secrecy for security reasons. But today he appeared eager to carry out his role as Commander-in-Chief of the Texas National Guard.
Pleased to have a chance to go down to Honduras to visit with our troops there. All reports so far indicate that everything's going very well. I understand everything. They're kind of looking forward, I think, to the barbecue, and all reports have been very favorable.
Well, the governor is taking hundreds of pounds of Texas-style barbecue and all the trimmings to the troops now on maneuvers in Honduras.
From 24 Action News, this is the Evening Report with the award-winning Action News team.
Texas Governor Mark White left Austin today to travel to Honduras. White is making the trip to observe members of the Texas National Guard who are conducting military exercises with the Honduran military near the Nicaraguan border. There's been a lot of political unrest in that part of Central America recently, but White says he's been assured by American military authorities there will be no problems. On hand for the governor's arrival was 24 Action News reporter Jeff Wool, who is part of an Action News team covering the military exercises there.
For the better part of a week, Texas tanks and troops have been establishing their presence on Honduras' southern border with Nicaragua, an American military presence that has caught the attention of Nicaraguan Sandinistas who are fearful of an invasion. Today, the American troop buildup is bolstering the confidence of Hondurans as well. Residents reading this morning's newspaper saw banner headlines suggesting American and Honduran soldiers were teaming up for a simulated attack on Nicaragua. But the hoopla doesn't bother Texas Governor Mark White. It was White who gave the Department of Defense the go-ahead to use 450 Texas National Guardsmen in these exercises. And as he arrived in the Honduran capital of Tegucigalpa, White began quoting the company line.
They're in a training mode, and it'll be a demonstration effort for letting them see what the realities of combat might be. Hopefully it'll be avoided. Obviously no one wants to see any conflict or bloodshed.
But for all of White's confidence, he no longer has power to stop these exercises since the Texas soldiers are out of the country and therefore under federal control. So if there is some sort of confrontation between the Texas troops training here and the Sandinistas, all White can do is stand by and watch the drama unfold. Jeff Wool, 24 Action News, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
And throughout the week at 6 and 10, we'll be hearing from Action News reporter Jeff Wool, who will be bringing us daily reports by satellite from Honduras. Dick?
From Austin's News Channel, this is the Channel 7 News 6 o'clock report. And Stephanie Williams, Steve Rample with weather, and Dave Cody on sports.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
At the top of our news tonight, Governor Mark White traded his pinstripe suit for fatigues this morning as he left Austin to inspect Texas National Guardsmen in Honduras. The Texas Guardsmen are taking part in military exercises in that Central American country, only miles from the fighting and unrest of Nicaragua. Olga Campos was at Bergstrom Air Force Base today for the governor's departure.
Preparations for the governor's trip began early this morning. First on the list, checking out the aircraft. Usually equipped to carry cargo, this Texas Air National Guard C-130 plane has been equipped now to carry 23 passengers to make the 4-hour and 45-minute trip to Honduras. While the plane was being loaded, the governor was being briefed on the weather conditions in Central America.
For Panama, for the next 72 hours, the temperatures will range from the low to mid-90s.
But hot, dry weather is not new to White, who served in the Texas National Guard 16 years ago.
Well, I think it's going to be very similar if it's hot there and it's dusty, and I understand that it is, so it will be not unlike North Fort Hood in that regard.
The present political tension in Honduras is a top concern to White, who as governor is also commander-in-chief of the Texas National Guard.
Well, every report we've had indicates that there has been no problem whatsoever, and we don't expect any. The tension seems to have been relieved somewhat over the past several days, and I hope that that will be a continuing trend.
Following his tour of Honduras, the governor will stop in Panama to oversee Texas Guardsmen stationed there. He's expected to be back in Austin by midweek. Olga Campos, Channel 7 News.
This is KTVV, TV 36 in Austin. News 36 with Bob Holland, Tanya Cook, Kathy Turner, and Vic Jacobs.
Good
Good evening. 400 Texas National Guardsmen are tonight participating in maneuvers in Honduras.
Governor Mark White has said all along that the troops are in no danger. This morning, the governor left Bergstrom Air Force Base for Honduras to pay a visit to the troops. As he was leaving, the governor again said he doesn't expect political unrest in Central America to be a problem. He says tension seems to have eased in the last few days. White will travel to the National Guard base camp tomorrow to watch the exercises. He's scheduled to return to Austin Wednesday night. Meanwhile, Jim Moore has been in Honduras. He has this report.
It is called a military exercise. Texas troops are training in Honduras within eyesight of Nicaragua's Sandinista soldiers, and that also makes it a political maneuver.
Another big bully attitude of the cowboy turned president, who forgets that there's a difference between movies and reality.
But the Texans adopt the posture of a soldier just following orders.
Political decisions is something that a sergeant never makes.
They do know their presence here is provocative.
Whatever they do, I strongly feel like we're ready for it.
The argument from Washington is the Texans are only practicing for the day civilian soldiers might be needed. They are also part of the U.S. attempt to intimidate the Sandinistas.
Gunner, take over, search the road, search the area right and left of the road.
But the Texans are practicing very close to a real war. Beyond that ridgeline in Nicaragua, the Sandinistas are preparing for battle. The region with the highest death rate in the Nicaraguan war is only 30 miles from Texas troops. Yali is a village of children without parents, and the Sandinistas are bringing in more troops.
I would oppose the sending of any National Guard battalions down there for any kind of training purposes or anything else. And I would urge the governor in the strongest terms possible to reconsider that kind of decision.
But the Texans are here. The killing is not far away, and there are worries about a group of Texas boys who are camped on the edge of someone else's war. Jim Moore reporting, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
From Austin's News Channel, this is the Channel 7 News 10 o'clock report. And Carolyn Tyler, Steve Rambo with weather, and Dave Cody on sports.
Good evening, I'm Carolyn Tyler.
I'm Bob Karstens. Thank you for joining us.
Governor White is in the Central American country of Honduras tonight. He's there to observe Texas National Guard training, maneuvers that put the Guard within just 3 miles of war-torn Nicaragua. We have this update on Mark White's trip tonight.
From the onset of Big Pine Tree, Governor Mark White has expressed concern over the safety of having Texas Guardsmen in Honduras, a concern echoed by the public. And upon arrival here, the quizzing continued. Why here? Why now? Why just 3 miles from Nicaragua?
Well, I think this is a realistic avenue for a potential intrusion into the country, but this is no different from other actions taken in Germany whenever our troops train there, and they do every year. And they get very close to the borders there, and I think the realism is important in trying to make sure that it's effective training.
Governor White was greeted at the Tegucigalpa airport by Ambassador John Negroponte, who also tried to squelch allegations that the war games are meant to intimidate the Sandinistas.
Exercises, they're just that. We're not looking to get involved directly militarily ourselves down here.
We've been reassured time and again that there's been every precaution taken so that everyone here will be secure.
Mark White's whole day seemed designed to set refused to rest. Accompanied by General James Dennis, who heads up the Texas Guard, the governor first received a military briefing at the permanent U.S. installation here.
They've just done a masterful job of getting this thing all put together.
After a short break to freshen up, the governor paid a visit to the Minister of the Presidency, Isidoro Arriaga. Arriaga is the Honduran equivalent to a chief of staff. He told the governor he's very happy with the support his country has received from the U.S. and now Texas. In fact, Arriaga says the basic tranquility in Honduras is due to the U.S. presence here. So there are assurances being efforted from both sides today. An assurance to Governor Mark White that his Guard
Guardsmen are receiving safe and effective training here, and an assurance to the Honduran government that the U.S. is in full support of this small but vital Central American ally. At the Presidential House in Tegucigalpa, I'm Linda White for KGBT News Center 4.
We apologize for the audio quality on that story. Now,
This is KTVV, TV 36 in Austin. News 36 Tonight with Bob Holland, Tanya Cook, Kathy Turner, and Vic Jacobs.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Governor Mark White is in Honduras tonight.
So are members of the Texas National Guard. White says that the Guard's role in the Honduran War Games is just that, a game. He says there is no reason to believe the War Games will turn into anything else. Leaders of several Hispanic organizations aren't so sure. They say anything can happen in the volatile Central American area. Jim Moore is in Honduras and has this report.
The appearance of Texas troops along the Honduran-Nicaraguan border is as much a political exercise as it is military. The mostly Hispanic Texas Battalion is part of Big Pine 3, maneuvers designed to intimidate the Marxist Sandinistas of Nicaragua.
They have a bigger stick than we do right now.
Long before the Texas troops arrived on the Nicaraguan frontier, there was criticism of the decision. Part-time civilian soldiers were being sent to one of the most sensitive spots in the world.
I feel that if those units were to go down, that the governor is making a terrible mistake.
Mark White did more than send soldiers. He went to Honduras himself. The Texas governor arrived in Tegucigalpa to spend 3 days with the troops.
It's not provocative, and it's also an opportunity for a very effective training mission.
White is not the only one trying to soften criticism of Texas troop presence here. That has also become the task of the U.S. ambassador to Honduras, who met the governor at the airport.
They're exercises, they're just that. We're not looking to get involved directly militarily ourselves down here.
A news embargo was placed on the governor's decision to come here. The reason cited was security, but it also served to diminish criticism. When civilian troops are sent to the edge of a real war zone, they are certain to attract attention, and some of that will be picked up by the man who sent them there, the governor, who's already made clear he's a candidate for re-election. Jim Moore reporting, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
More of the goods you see here will be stamped Made in America if Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone gets his country to accept a new 3-year trade plan announced today. Well, good morning from Washington. I'm Reed Collins, and welcome to the last hour of Day Watch this Tuesday, April 9th.
A U.S. delegation is in Nicaragua to begin a fact-finding tour. The group includes former CIA Director Stansfield Turner and several Democratic members of Congress. They hope to meet with Nicaragua's president while in Managua. And from the capital, the delegation members hope to travel north to Matagalpa. That provincial city is near the war zone where Nicaraguan rebels are active. Texas National Guardsmen and U.S. troops are currently on maneuvers just about 100 miles away in Honduras. CNN's Lee Green reports.
The Texas Guardsmen are working out practically in the shadow of these Nicaraguan mountains. They are playing the bad guys. The Texas Task Force will this week simulate a Warsaw Pact-style attack against Honduran defenders. Governor Mark White of Texas arrived in Honduras today for a visit with his troops. The governor defended the location of the exercises, just a few miles from the Nicaraguan border, this way.
Well, I think this is a realistic avenue for potential intrusion into the country, but this is no different from other actions taken in Germany whenever our troops train there, and they do every year. And they get very close to the borders there, and I think the realism is important in trying to make sure that it's effective training effort.
There have been no incidents so far involving U.S. and Nicaraguan Sandinista troops, but the Nicaraguans are staging their own war games not far away. The Texas National Guardsmen have been issued with orders to be cautious in dealing with any non-Americans. So far, so good, as the Texans try to keep cool in 100-degree-plus temperatures. Lee Green, CNN, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
From Austin's News Channel, this is the Channel 7 News 6 o'clock reports. With Bob Karstens and Stephanie Williams. Steve Rampel with weather, and Dave Cody on sports.
Good evening. We're glad you could join us.
At the top of our news tonight, Governor Mark White toured the military camps in Honduras today, where Texas National Guard troops are based. Linda White reports the governor observed Texas troops conducting war maneuvers with other American and Honduran soldiers.
The road leads to the southern border region, and the Honduran army is on its way to position for Wednesday's war games. The opposing forces, meantime, were receiving their commander-in-chief for a last-minute morale boost.
I'm very proud that you have accepted this mission and you've performed it, I think, with great vigor and determination. I'm very proud to have an opportunity to be here with you today.
Amid the pomp and circumstance, Adjutant National Guard General James Dennis tried to put the games into a perspective that until today, the military has shied away from.
There are those that would question our motives for being here, but I would say to them, if we're going to take our place in the defense of this nation, we must train in this fashion, because the way we train is the way we fight.
Even if there is an underlying reason for the time and place of the war exercises, the Guard seems proud to be on this mission, and the governor wants them to display that pride.
I saw in the news right after you had deployed here in Honduras a very familiar flag that was flying from one of the masts around, and the only problem that I had was I'm afraid it wasn't quite large enough to be seen as far away as we like for it to be seen, and therefore I'm going to present the garrison flag to you, Colonel Lopez, so that we'll have a flag of adequate size down here in Honduras.
It's very nice of him, to come and visit us all the way down here to Honduras.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm very, very excited. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me.
The rank-and-file showmanship of today will take to the fields tomorrow for the highlight of the whole training mission, the actual war games. And it's a mission, in the words of the governor, that the Texas Guardsmen will carry out with distinction. At the Alamo in Honduras, I'm Linda White for CBS News, Southwest.
This is KTVV, TV 36 in Austin. News 36 with Bob Holland, Tanya Cook, Kathy Turner, and Vic Jacobs.
Good evening. I'm Hollis Grizzard. Bob Holland has the night off.
And I'm Tanya Cook. In the news, the war is make-believe.
But the reality is that the Texas National Guard troops are in Honduras tonight, less than 4 miles from the Nicaraguan border. It is along that border that political unrest has erupted into a real confrontation. But Governor Mark White still says our troops are in no danger. The governor today traveled to the base camp to watch the Big Pine 3 maneuvers. Jim Moore has this update from Honduras.
Mark White's visit to Central America has the feel of a Bob Hope show without the one-liners. There is the appearance of a campaign looking for an election.
Yeah, we've been here earlier.
The governor of Texas is visiting troops of the Texas National Guard. They are deployed on a training maneuver along the militarily sensitive Honduran-Nicaraguan border.
They need lawyers down here too, don't they?
When I went, that's right. The official reason for White's visit is to review the exercises of the Guard. But the troops did nothing but stand in the 130-degree heat and listen to the governor. The tanks and guns did not move. And even if the Sandinistas are only a few miles away, the Texans had trouble thinking military strategy.
This barbecue may not be as good as what y'all prepared. It was at least done in Texas, and it was done by Texans.
The political maneuvering of these exercises has attracted more attention than the military exercises. The presence of part-time Texas soldiers has been called provocative.
There are those that would question our motives for being here, but I would say to them, if we're going to take our place in the defense of this nation, we must train in this fashion.
The timing of the governor's visit stresses international protocol. The governor's entourage of staff and reporters is more than a curiosity in a nation trying to defuse last week's political and military crisis.
The exercises by Texas troops along the Nicaraguan border marks the first time American armor has been introduced into this troubled region. It's also the first time a governor of any state in the United States has held his weekly news conference on the perimeter of a guerrilla war. There was one discernible accomplishment for this trip, the delivery of a huge nylon Texas flag, an expression of a form of nationalism the nearby Sandinistas may not be able to understand. Jim Moore reporting along the Honduran-Nicaraguan border.
Tonight, Governor White flies to Panama, and News 36 reporter Nelson Duffel is also traveling with the governor. And tonight at 10, he'll have more on White's visit to Central America.
This is KTVV, TV 36 in Austin. News 36 Tonight with Bob Holland, Tanya Cook, Kathy Turner, and Vic Jacobs.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Bob Holland has the night off. Governor Mark White did his best to put politics aside today as he visited Texas National Guard troops in Honduras. The governor spent 4 hours with the troops near the Nicaraguan border. The visit began with a briefing on the current war games, which include the Texas troops. But most of the governor's visit was spent mingling with the guardsmen and talking about the 400 pounds of Texas barbecue he brought them. White saw more peace than war. The actual war games involving M60 tanks begins tomorrow, with the closing ceremony scheduled for Saturday. The governor is in Panama tonight. He's to return to Bergstrom Air Force Base on Thursday, but indications are that could change. He could return as early as tomorrow morning. Now, reporters keep asking Governor White why he's in the Latin American country. The governor responds by saying he wants to show support for Texas troops there. News 36's Nelson Duffel has also been traveling with the White entourage. He had the opportunity to question the governor at length.
Governor White continues to stand firm on his reasons for coming to Honduras. On the flight down here Monday, he had this to say.
Every training mission our National Guard has been involved in, I've tried to go and be with the troops in the field when they were on training mission, and that's what we're doing here today.
When asked about being accused of taking his commander-in-chief role too seriously and acting a little like John Wayne.
Well, let me say, old John Wayne didn't lose too many, and I think that's not a bad plan for our country as well as our military.
Governor, over this way. Someone had a question.
Over here.
White denies this trip is politically motivated. He says it will put no feather in his political cap. But the fact is, his visit is attracting a lot of media attention, and it is all being directed at Mark White. For example, the governor has made no secret that he's bringing along barbecue for the Texas National Guard troops. A Texas cookout just a few miles from the Nicaraguan border is certain to make some people sit up and take notice, especially Texans. White will actually see little of the real Honduras. Most of his time will be spent with the National Guard and in the capital city. Tegucigalpa is for the most part like any other bustling city. The people here are friendly, and by now they're used to seeing Americans. In fact, from this standpoint, it's hard to imagine that Honduras is situated in one of the most volatile regions of the world. From Tegucigalpa, Honduras, Nelson Duffel, News 36 Tonight.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. There was fighting of sorts going on today to Nicaragua's north in Honduras, where about 10,000 U.S. and Honduran troops were holding the so-called Big Pine 3 war games. While the maneuvers were of international scope, as Martha Teichner reports, they had a distinct local political look.
This little display was actually the last act of an embarrassing Texas controversy. Politically ambitious Texas governor sending National Guard troops, most of them Hispanic, along with their tanks, to hotspot of Latin America for war games. If not the eyes of Texas, practically all of its cameras were on that state's National Guard when Governor Mark White showed up wearing his crisply pressed fatigues in the 130-degree Honduran sun with Texas barbecue at what else? Camp El Alamo, 3 miles from the Nicaraguan border.
We're delighted to have an opportunity to come and visit with you in this first of its kind exercise for the Texas Guard.
The governor having come and gone, today the Texas Guard, tank unit 90% Hispanic, got down to business. Their mission? Pretend to be the bad guys, invading Sandinistas, so that the Honduran army could practice anti-tank defense. If some Texans back home thought it all smelled of racism, not to mention political opportunism, that's not what the Guardsmen think.
The military is an equal opportunity employer.
Just what you call dedicated National Guardman doing what he can.
And we're very proud. I could say that we're damn proud of being here, and we're going to go back home like that.
The Texans of Camp El Alamo may not see themselves as part of any larger political picture, but like it or not, they are.
They are civilians, insurance salesmen, cooks, doctors, weekend soldiers who as National Guardsmen must be willing to take sides on behalf of U.S. interests and policies, even if someday that means Hispanic fighting Hispanic here. Martha Teichner, CBS News with the Texas National Guard in Honduras.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. In farther south tonight, there are American forces in place along the border between Honduras and Nicaragua. Military exercises are underway in Central America again. And as ABC's Peter Collins explains, the Americans are playing the enemy.
The Texas National Guard sent a message for Ronald Reagan today. It was addressed to Nicaragua just 3 miles away across the Honduran border. And it was, look at our firepower, look at our muscle, here we are. The Americans were playing the enemy today, using their tanks to simulate an attack on Honduras by the 70,000-man Sandinista army. Honduran Air Force jets simulated a counterattack on the mock invaders. The large Sandinista force in Nicaragua makes Honduras, with a much weaker army, feel vulnerable and nervous. But why should the Sandinistas want to attack Honduras? Because of the so-called Contras. Honduras is home base for these anti-Sandinista rebels backed by the United States. From secure bases along the border, the Contras go deep inside Nicaragua to attack the Sandinistas. This is the third American exercise of this type in 3 years, and the U.S. maintains forces here year-round. Their presence reassures the Hondurans, but it also makes them edgy. With an eye on congressional politics, the Honduran military wonders whether it will be left holding the bag if the U.S. decides to go away. So today, the Texans were hoping their training would help the Hondurans.
If the Hondurans can learn from us how to defend this area using their anti-armor capability, then all the Russian armor that is there is for naught.
This is the closest American forces have been to Nicaragua. So far, the pressure has not moved the Sandinistas. That's why it's likely there will be more exercises like this one. Peter Collins, ABC News, Las Hormigas, Honduras.
From Austin's News Channel, this is the Channel 7 News 6 o'clock reports. And Stephanie Williams, Steve Rampel with weather, and Dave Cody on sports.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
At the top
Governor Mark White is headed back home tonight after his 3-day trip to Central America. This afternoon, White visited U.S. troops stationed in Panama. Yesterday in Honduras, the governor observed the Texas National Guard troops conducting war games with other American and Honduran soldiers. The governor was invited across the border to Nicaragua, but declined the invitation, saying there wasn't enough time this trip.
This is KTVV, TV 36 in Austin. News 36 tonight with Bob Holland, Tanya Cook, Kathy Turner, and Vic Jacobs.
Good evening. Bob Holland has the night off. Governor White is returning from Honduras early tomorrow morning. We'll take a look at his trip when News 36 Tonight continues. Governor Mark White is expected to arrive at Bergstrom Air Force Base early tomorrow morning after wrapping up his 3-day trip to Central America. The governor has been in Honduras, where Texas National Guardsmen are participating in war games with Honduran troops. Nelson Duffel has also been in Honduras. Tonight, he wraps up his reports from that country.
The southern part of Honduras looks a lot like the Big Bend region of Texas. The weather's the same. Hot. And it's obvious there are Texans here. But that's about where the similarities end. The Big Pine 3 maneuvers are war games, but the potential danger in this area is very real. Ever since the Texas National Guard plans were announced, there has been much discussion as to how close the troops would be located to Nicaragua. The National Guard camp is about half a mile down the road, and the volcano you see in the background is Nicaragua.
Treasurer and Controller, all present accounted for, sir.
Governor White's visit to the base camp was designed to downplay any suggestion of danger. He was warmly greeted in a Texas fashion, and the troops seemed genuinely pleased that he was here for whatever reason.
I think it's a real good idea. It's a real boost for our morale.
I don't know what he thinks he can accomplish. Maybe get some votes.
And to each of you members of the Texas Army National Guard, I'm extremely proud today to be here as your governor, and I'm very hopeful that we can conclude this camp without any serious injury. And I know that with your help we can.
The actual war games will start Wednesday. For the past couple of weeks, the troops have been setting up camp and working with the natives. For example, this medical camp is located in the tiny village of El Carmen. Hundreds of Hondurans have come here to receive checkups and inoculations, all courtesy of the National Guard. Back at base camp, it seemed only fitting that the governor of Texas should end his visit with a barbecue, even if he was the one who provided it. And if he was looking to make an impression on the troops, he made it. Most said it was the best meal they've had since they left the States. From the Texas National Guard base camp near Choluteca, Honduras, Nelson Duffel, News 36.
Keaton Rylander.
Governor, in this same situation in Austin, a person who only carries liability insurance on the car as required by law, and who rents and carries insurance is going to be paying more.
He was bragging on reductions, and they are reflective of the conditions in the industry. And I think that I'm meeting this afternoon with the Apartment Owners Association, and I'm going to talk with them on what they can do to help reduce the experience that they've had for losses.
Won't these increases over this kind of insurance be hitting the lower and lower middle income people more?
No. We're talking about these particular instances or rate reductions or overall rate reductions for homeowners.
Reductions of $75,000 home, $47 savings. That seems like almost like the upper end of the brackets.
Well, it is an overall rate reduction for homeowners. I think that certainly there will be those who have pay lower premiums or have less reductions. That's a natural order of things.
Governor, with the State Board of Insurance moving this way to reduce auto rates and homeowners rates, and with the Public Utility Commission now moving the way that they are you hoping that maybe these will help offset any criticism you might get for the tax bill that was passed during the special session?
Well, they're separate instances and they stand alone. The taxes that were asked for were specifically for education and highway. And those are examples of what was needed, and that we asked people for money to make sure that we had the best educational programs and improved mobility in our transportation system. These are just examples of three fine commissioners doing the job that they have undertaken, and it shows, I think, that state government is responsive and very quickly responding to differences in the economy that will result in lower costs for people living in Texas.
Have you talked to them about political insurance?
About that? No, it's the rates are far too high.
George Strait suggests...
Let me go on to another issue before we get into that. Are there any other questions about this? I'd be glad to.
Have expressed in some of the hearings lately your concern about the shape that the insurance industry is in general. How do these rate reductions reflect your concern about the health of the insurance industry?
Well,
you can move up, please.
Yeah. First of all, we have a methodology and a formula that we use at the State Board. Anyone who knows anything about the insurance industry knows that it is cyclical. I will say that the State Board in the last 2 years has treated investment income differently than any state in the country, especially in the last few rate hearings over the last 2 to 3 years. The industry is in some financial difficulties. The reinsurance industry is beginning to constrict, and I think that you will see some alterations and change in rates in the next 2 or 3 years. We can predict that right now, but the fact of the matter is that we pay very close attention to profits and contingencies, and heretofore the states throughout this country have allowed a 5% profit in contingency. Mr. Daves was chairman of a national task force of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners on dealing with the issue of investment income. The board in 1981 began, really 1980, began the direct treatment of investment income. We've abolished the 5% profit loading. It's not realistic today. We have gone as low as yesterday with a negative 6% profit loading. We've had some philosophical differences over that, and that's all they are, philosophical differences. But the fact of the matter is that the reason that you're seeing some pretty tough rate reductions is because we have that rate tightened down about as tight as you're going to get it. And I would submit to you that we have the finest honed rate regulatory system in the United States. There are times when we wonder if we have it too finely honed, but the people of this state do not need to worry, hopefully as long as we're regulating, that rates are going to be excessive. On the other hand, you can talk about taking all kinds of credit for rate decreases. I would want to ensure the general public too that the rates will be adequate enough for the companies to make a healthy profit, so that if there are any potential insolvencies, hopefully there won't be. The money will be there before those insolvencies take care of their claims. And we set rates that are, in our opinion, not confiscatory and that are not excessive. And we are doing what we think we have been charged by statute to do. And I think that I know that I speak for Ryland and Mr.
Charles, just one question. What accounts for the increase in renter's insurance? Just more expensive?
Well, when you regulate insurance rates, and when you set a rate, you have to understand that you're looking at the risk, you're looking at the peril, you're looking at the potential losses and claims. And a homeowner, often, while I've rented apartments for a long time myself. When I was in the legislature, I rented an apartment down here in Austin. When I was in Waco, and I keep my home in Waco, I have a place. But as a homeowner, as a general rule, you're going to find that there are different perils, there are different risks. The claims that are made are often different. There are a lot of different reasons you do that. The structure, the way the structure is built, the quality of the structure would often be commensurate with the kind of structure, whether it be a veneer structure, a brick structure. When we set rates, we deal very technically with certain kinds of risk. And so you say renter versus homeowner. Well, if you look at our statistics and you look at our tables, you're going to see that there are a lot of different kind of dwellings in homeowners, a lot of different kind of dwellings in renters. So what might be a general question, I couldn't respond to you specifically because those rates are going to vary even by territory. What we're giving you is an overall average, an overall decrease. But you have to look at the risk and look at the perils and look at what's being underwritten and look what the loss experiences are, and you come up with actuarial tables that give you adequate numbers. And that's what you're going to see.
I do think what the governor's doing this afternoon will be helpful meeting with the Apartment Association, because in that tenant homeowners, it covers the contents, and theft is a major theft followed by fire, and I think they can do some things to make a difference.
Am I correct in assuming that you're saying that renters are more of a risk than homeowners?
No, I think that that's not if I were a renter and somebody said to me, you're more of a risk than somebody that owns a home, I don't mean that. What I mean is that structurally, a single family dwelling, for instance, is going to be rated differently than a multi-residential area. In that instance, you look at the structure and the way it's built, and I think from an actuarial standpoint, you would find that, yeah, there's more exposure there. The structures may not be built quite the same. They may not be built to last for 100 years. In that instance, yeah, it's more of a risk. In terms of the kinds of individuals that rent as opposed to own, it has nothing to do with their humanity. We're just looking at actuarial tables here.
Since the beginning of this school year, I've had several opportunities to visit with classroom teachers, and their enthusiasm, I believe, is growing for the educational reforms passed during the special session. But almost without exception, they expressed concern about increased paperwork infringing on the time that they can devote to teaching and preparing their lessons. Any investigation of this problem inevitably leads to a review of House Bill 246 passed in 1981. Let me make clear that House Bill 246 was a significant step forward in educational reform. That bill was an attempt to get curriculum writing out of the legislature and into the hands of professional educators. That law established the need for the essential elements in our curriculum, and through that law, and although that law is quite short, the guidelines it generated are extensive. A copy of the required curriculum takes one page. By the time the state education agency got through translating that into this, it turned into 246 pages. I don't think the legislature knew how all-encompassing their statute may have been, but that's what we've been faced with. It should not be necessary to require experienced and professionally trained teachers to fill out form after form to document the basic elements in their daily lessons. The essential elements should be documented in curriculum guides, not in daily lesson plans. How can any teacher be expected to do a quality job if he or she is not allowed the time to work with students? And how can we expect teachers to meet students' needs during the work day and then spend their evenings completing forms or filling out excessive lesson plan requirements? This week I've written members of the State Board of Education and personally requested that the issue of reducing paperwork requirements for teachers be given top priority both at the board and the Texas Education Agency. Chairman Brumley and Dr. Kirby are both very concerned about the issue, and I am confident that the board will act quickly to resolve this legitimate concern of teachers throughout the state. The goal of House Bill 72 is to recapture the school day for academics, not for filling out forms. That same bill contains specific language instructing the board and the Texas Education Agency to reduce the paperwork burden on school districts. And let me specifically call your attention to Section 21.753 of House Bill 72, Accreditation Standards, which says the accreditation standards must include consideration of paperwork reduction efforts. This same attention to the needs of school districts should also be paid to the needs of teachers. It is imperative that we alleviate the undue burden of unnecessary paperwork. I strongly encourage the State Board of Education and the Texas Education Agency to contact local school districts to clarify the requirements regarding paperwork and suggest ways to streamline reports. Our children deserve their teachers' undivided attention, and our teachers deserve an opportunity to do what they're hired to do, teach. Thank you very much. Any questions?
You're not going to have Dulce back your press conference.
If I'm not going to what?
You're not going to ever have Dulce back your own press
I sure am. I just give you 30 minutes. He wants to take 15. That's fine.
When you talked the other night,
You're always welcome. Once a member of the House, always a member of the House is my prediction on that.
when you talked the other night about rejoining the Democratic Party, where did you plan to start in person?
Well, we started sometime around 8 o'clock Wednesday morning, and I think things are going pretty well. We've had opportunities to visit with many of the governors across the country and also talk with other party officials and leaders historically in the Democratic Party, and I think that there is a new recognition of maybe a very vivid recognition that for a long, long time the national ticket has not been as reflective of the concerns of most of the American people as a lot of people would have you think. We have seen historically the Democratic ticket at the national level has been unsuccessful in trying to attract the attention of the voters and the support of the mass of the voters of this country. And if you'll go back in history, I think you'll find it was 1933 was the last time a Democratic president or a Democratic candidate for president was able to have anything approaching a landslide victory in an election in which he was not the office holder. Ever since then, you had President Truman, which was not viewed as a landslide victory. President Kennedy, one of the closest margins in American history. President Johnson, of course, was there in '64 with a dramatic increase, yet 4 years later we have President Nixon winning that election. Then even after Watergate and even against the man who pardoned Nixon, we were barely able to squeak out a victory with Carter. Since that time, we've been unable to be successful with the national ticket. However, if you'll look, the Democratic Party is strong, broad-based, very well, I think, received by the bulk of the people in this country. In spite of one of the largest landslide victories in presidential politics, we picked up 2 seats in the Senate. We lost relatively few seats, 14 I think it was, in the House. We lose 1 governor's race. That particular one was Utah, which has been, I guess, probably the strongest Republican state in 1980 for President Reagan. At the same time, we elected a Democratic governor there. He did not run for re-election, and a Republican did win, in which there was no incumbent. There was no incumbent in the Democratic part of the race in North Carolina, in which the Democrat traditionally would have been the winner, did not win. So I think the Democratic ticket is very strong. The party needs to recognize the successes at the state level have not been enjoyed at the national level, and that may be a reflection on the way in which we do business nationally.
Are you offering yourself as a new leader?
Oh, Lord, no.
Governor, there has been a concern expressed that the Democratic Party cannot win nationwide because it does not attract the middle-class, white, male vote.
Well, it didn't on Tuesday.
Well, and the concern is that if you continue to be a coalition of blacks, browns, laborers, and others, you alienate the white vote.
Let me just say this. I think it's a problem the national ticket has by default as opposed to by philosophy. If you will look at the constituency in almost every single one of the states in which we now have 34 Democratic governors, the coalition that you speak of is a coalition of business, small business, entrepreneurial type of business, and all of those people are kind of in middle America. It does not exclude anyone. And for that reason, I think there has been dramatic success. I mean, it's a little hard to argue with 34 Democratic governors, and that's in the face of 2 Reagan victories. So I think you'll find that what we're talking about is a problem at the national level with the party, not at the state and local level.
Governor, do you think it made any difference if Mondale would have picked Lloyd Bentsen or some?
Oh, it would have made some difference, but I think that the personal popularity of Ronald Reagan was such that it would have been difficult to assemble a ticket that would have been able to override that personal goodwill that he has generated.
What changes are you going to have to make to deal with a House that is so much more Republican?
Well, if they would, I don't think that there'll be any changes required. I think that it was kind of maybe a speaking from the soul comment in which they said they had a veto over measures in the Texas legislature. I would hope to think they would be progressive in trying to make positive changes that would improve our state, not block those changes. So maybe that was just a political spokesman for them and not the person who would be doing the work in the legislature. I think we'll be able to work well together.
Still, there are a lot of votes, crucial type of votes in the House that require a 2/3 majority. Are you at all fearful that?
Well, let me say it this way. No, I'm not at all. Not at all.
Governor, why did the Democratic leadership in Texas go through all those polls? Were you just listening to or what?
Well, quite frankly, I think that I underestimated the percentage turnout for Ronald Reagan. Frankly, I think he was about 10% stronger than I would have anticipated. I didn't run any polls personally. Hadn't been privy to any for several weeks. But I think that you'll find that all of their crowing about the congressional victory, the seats that they're bragging about winning this time, they were bragging about winning last time, but didn't. They've always, George Bush was supposed to beat Ken Hance 2 years ago. Didn't do it. And it took a 50-point margin at the presidential level to bring some of the Republicans across the line with a 1 or 2 point margin. So that's hardly what I would call the depth of strength that would be necessary to ensure those seats against Democratic victories 2 years from now.
Governor, given everything you just said about Reagan's personal popularity and their lack of success in national offices in other states, why did the Republicans go so deep in this time?
Well, it was, you know, if there'd been a Lloyd Benson or someone of that sort at the senatorial level as an incumbent, I think you would have found more or less a stopping point on the ballot. I don't think that that was the problem, that we did not have someone there in that regard. But that's the way things go.
You don't see any kind of major realignment.
Yeah.
You don't see Texas
Oh, I think,
a real two-party state.
well, it's always been two-party enough for me.
You say that, you know what I'm asking. I mean, you don't see that there is a
Well,
significant body of Republicans now who you will never get back.
no, I fully expect that there'll be Democratic challenges in all those areas that were marginal. You know, like I said before, let's go look at the Panhandle region. Ronald Reagan carries the Panhandle 75% to 25%, and yet Jack Hightower is defeated by 53-47. It's a 50-point spread in one place and 6 in the other. That's hardly the realignment that we've been hearing about, I don't think.
What about the Railroad Commission?
Well, that was close.
Does the proposers of those two judicial races?
I'm just glad to see those Athens Democrats hold him in there for Mac Wallace.
The Democrats seem to be explaining this away as a popularity thing for President Reagan. Do you view that as a case, or do you think the Democratic Party is going to have to swing more to conservative?
I think, obviously, that Reagan is extremely popular, and there's no question about that throughout the nation. But it also is a comment, and I think it's a very unfavorable comment about the National Democratic structure that has to recognize that we are no longer in a position, I don't say any longer, we haven't been for many years in a position to rely solely upon the constituencies that they have. They have to broaden their base. They have to have an appeal for the small business people. They have to have an appeal for the job holder and not just the unemployed. And until they do that, and I think we've shown a good course of action in Texas. I think we've done it in Texas. And I'm very proud of the business support that we have here. I'm proud of the support that we have from high-tech industry people in this state that we've seen will vote for Ronald Reagan and not for National Democrats.
What's happened to the young Democrats, the white, middle-class Democrats, particularly college?
Well, I think that there is as they mature and go into life, that there's changes that occur in their political philosophy. But I think that we have to recognize the reality of many of those young people never having experienced hard times. Even their parents never experienced many hard times. And there's also a new movement in population from northeast to south and southwest. So you have a different makeup of our population. And I think that it's our job now to go and show them that we have not only an appeal to their own needs, but also to the compassionate needs for the people who are less fortunate.
Governor, on another step, said that you and Lloyd Benson put your reputations on the line by supporting Mondale and Doggett, and that those reputations have now been tarnished, and that you should all be worried, you and Jim Clinton and Jim Maddox, and Gary Morrow about 1986.
I am always worried. I worry constantly. I worry without ceasing.
Are you worried that this is going to carry over and continue to see this as a trend?
Well, I think Bill Hobby may have said it well. The remarkable thing about landslides is how quickly they're reversed. There was a change in his district lines down there, and I think there was an enormous turnout for Ronald Reagan.
Governor, is it going to be 3%, 30 whatever percent it was? I mean, that's not exactly a coattail victory. That was a statement. At least that's how it's being done.
Well, I believe there was a change in his district lines. I'm not that familiar with the district he runs in, but I believe there was.
Back to what you said a little bit ago, is it going to be up to the Democratic governors to take the Washington arm of your party now and straighten out? Richard Land in Colorado yesterday said much what you said, that the national leadership is totally out of touch.
Depending on what their goals are in life, I enjoy winning a lot more than losing, and I think the Democratic governors have indicated an ability to win, and there may be some magic, or maybe there's some example for the National Party to try to copy.
What governors do you talk with, and do you see some sort of ongoing group of young governors, middle-of-the-road governors here who are
Well, no, I think so. I think you've got to look at what occurred yesterday in the election. You've got Bill Clinton in Arkansas. Ronald Reagan carries the state 65%. Bill Clinton carries it as a Democrat, 65%. That's a good example of the people saying, I like this guy and this guy. And Arkansas is a strong Democratic state. Had we had, you have governors across the country that were reelected yesterday as Democrats and women. I talked to Babbitt and to Clinton and to Sheffield and some others.
Was the president right that the Democratic Party is losing such the constituents of people out there?
Well, I think that the national ticket, in face of his popularity, was unable to penetrate through the combination of the money, the attitudes, the times, and all that. Given increasing unemployment rather than declining unemployment, you might have somewhat different result, but yet Reagan is still an incumbent president who is extremely well liked, and I think during peace and prosperity, or apparent prosperity, we're unlikely to unseat that combination.
How much in charge middle class white pan out over the years? You started to display projects before you started black and brown, and the working class. Are you looking at the upper middle class like white collar working class?
I think the success of the Democratic Party in Texas and most of the other states is that we don't rule out any person, and we include all people. And that includes the rich as well as the poor. It includes the employed as well as the unemployed. It includes the well-educated as well as the uneducated. And I think that if you'll look and see the breadth of our constituency, that we have not excluded anyone.
Who's in charge now at the national level of the Democratic Party? Is anybody in charge?
Well, there is a, party organization still there, and I think you'll find that there will be a great deal of rethinking as to the course of action the National Party should take.
What should governor specifically broaden their base? What action should they take?
Well, I think they have to adopt positions that aren't viewed as anti-defense, but pro-defense. In Texas, we've been outspoken in defense issues. We're a pro-defense state. And as a Democrat, very strongly supportive of our military services. At the same time, I think they have been permitted to be cast as anti-defense, and that's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. And to the extent that it is, then they have to make changes.
What about the state party structure, Governor? Do you think changes need to be made?
I think that there have been changes made, and I expect there will be some others considered.
In leadership?
Sure.
What about changes in the rules?
No, not in the leadership. I'm talking about in the way in which the party operates.
What about changes in the rules? The Texas delegation to the Democratic National Convention this year was probably about as left a group as people have seen for a long time. Will there have to be changes there to reduce the impact of labor and?
Well, I think what you have to do is include all sections of the community as opposed to try to reduce someone's impact. I think you have to include management as well as labor. If you leave half the equation out, you've left out half of the whole operating formula for the country.
Is one way to do that to eliminate the convention system because of the fight management people aren't coming to the convention people?
Well, apparently a lot of people don't go to conventions anymore, and I think that's a problem. I think it's a sign of the times. People are convenience oriented. They don't want to spend all their time voting. That's the reason I think you have a lot of absentee votes. I doubt that all those people are out of the county on election day. People are convenience oriented. They like to make their political choices in the, quickly and efficiently, and you go on about their business. They don't like to spend all day arguing about issues that may not be relative to their conditions in life. And I think the Democratic Party has to recognize that.
Should the party have treated the hard supporters better, do you think, now, in
What's
the
that?
clarity of hindsight?
I'm sorry?
In the clarity of hindsight, do you think the party should have treated the hard people better during state?
I don't think they were treated harshly. I think that,
They do.
well, if they were, then they shouldn't have been, certainly, because it's been my inclination that if someone is going to vote for you, they're not going to do it if you treat them harshly.
Would Gary Hart have made a better candidate?
Oh, I don't know. I think Mondale did all that could have been done under the circumstances.
Governor, what's the single biggest mistake you think Texas Democrats made?
I don't think they made any. No, I don't think Texas Democrats have made any mistakes in this. This was a personal victory for the President of the United States. He was extremely popular. And I don't know that there's anything that could have been done that would have changed that.
How about counting on the valley and say the farmers and ranchers like you talked about?
Well, I think that certainly there were, the appeal was never made to them that I would have made, but then again, I wasn't a candidate.
Well, why do you attribute the fact that there was more Republican victories down the line in Texas and North Carolina than in almost any other state?
Well, because I think you didn't have the same ingredients that you would if you had a Lloyd Benson running for re-election, obviously, or on the ticket, or, well, that may have made some difference, but I don't know.
Do you think the relative affluence of Texas had anything to do with it, compared to?
Well, I wouldn't want to change that.
On the state leadership this morning, former LULAC President Tony Bonilla said that Slagle should step down and be replaced by Hispanic, primarily Michigan Cisneros. Do you agree with that?
You know, I think we have to broaden the base and trying to include all people in the Democratic Party, and not just, as I was saying, a small portion. Right now, apparently, we have nationwide a real solid lock on 36%. Last time I looked, we needed one more than half.
Governor, is it tying in for a Biden presidential primary in Texas? Is that what you're saying about when you talk about convenience?
I think that may be one of the things that be considered.
Are you going to be at the SDC on Saturday and tell them that that's what you think they ought to recommend?
Well, I don't have any plans to have any definite recommendation to that time.
Will you be there?
I hadn't made a final decision on attendance yet.
Is that preferable to the convention system that we have now?
Well, I've always thought that primaries were very good. I was maybe because I was successful in primaries.
Governor, on a different subject,
Yes,
what can we
sir.
expect tomorrow on this meeting you've called with the Gulf Coast cities as far as the location on this
We're just trying to get some coordination and let them know exactly what we can and cannot do to help in their efforts at trying to be the site selected for that naval armada.
What can you do?
Well, that's what we're going to be talking about, some of the things in which we can coordinate our efforts to give them an opportunity to present their best position.
Governor, on your request to get flood disaster aid.
You bet. I would expect that he would almost be one of the sole determinants.
On your request to the federal government to declare Harris County a disaster area, could you tell us what the status on that is and what you expect?
I just signed those papers, and hopefully we'll get quick action from the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Governor, on education, the LED this morning endorsed Jack Strong's proposal to give students an extra 6 weeks if they flunked a course to continue to participate in extracurricular activities. Do you think that waters down House Bill 7?
No, we're not going to see the House bill watered down. We're going to see any inequities eliminated. And I've been concerned about the impact of some of the inequities and the way in which students would be disqualified from participating in extracurricular activities. I want them to participate. We're trying to use this if you don't pass, you don't play rule to be an incentive for them to work hard and to make their grades. I don't want to see some half measure, and I don't think the board will adopt half measures in doing this. You know, that would be tantamount to saying, well, if you get down and coach to the 5-yard line, you get 3 points. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make all these young people get over the finish line, get into the end zone, and to pass.
So do you support Strong's proposal as it stands
I
now?
think you'll find there'll be probably some modifications to it. I think that it's an opportunity for discussion and something that, no, I just said what I said. I said I think it's an opportunity for discussion. I don't think it'll pass in that precise form.
In your run to the end zone, aren't you trampling over teachers by putting them in between?
I don't want to do that. I don't want teachers to be given additional pressures from parents and from coaches that will divert their attention from their real role in the classroom as being an instructor.
Governor, have you made a final decision like this in TCC for next year's program?
I'm sorry.
TCC, Texas Conservation Corps.
I think the program went well, and I think it was the program was very helpful, and we're going to look at it and see if we can do it again.
Dr. Biden said that this was about 2 weeks ago that he would make a decision on whether that would be a permanent thing that would be funded. Have you?
I have not. No, I have not made a final decision.
Governor, in your conversations with other Democratic leaders, was there no one who preferred to view the Democratic Party as not really all that out of step? It's a function as simple as the economy, and when, as Walter Mondale said, the deficit comes back to pay and the president needs to grow, that the party will be right where it should be?
Well, obviously, if your appeal is to the unemployed and you have more unemployed, you're going to have a broader base. If your appeal is to both the unemployed and the employed, you now have the ultimate base. because everybody falls into that definition.
I guess what I'm asking is, now that the election is over, is the deficit going to recede as a major issue, or is that going to be the thing that...
No, I think, the dynamics of the economy will have an impact on the next election 2 years from now. The dynamics of every economy. It's very rare that any president is put out of office during, quote, peace and prosperity. We have, in addition to peace and prosperity at this time, we have a very popular president. So for that reason, I think you had an extraordinary support for him personally, and yet you can look nationwide and find 2 Democratic seat increase in the Senate. So, I mean, how do you explain that?
Do you think the party as a rule accepts the fact, Walter Mondale's assertions, that there will be crow being eaten by the president this time around?
Well, I hope, let me say this, I hope that we can see the president's view of the future come true. I think it's a view that we'd all like to see come true. I think that's the reason he gained support. People want that to work that way. If it does, wonderful. If it doesn't, we'll have alternatives in the next election.
Governor, on another matter, is there an occasion or a deadline you had for helping to work out TDC problems?
Every day is a deadline. No, I'm very anxious for them to move forward on every facet of their effort to reorganize, to maintain control in the prison, to provide safety for each prisoner as well as our guards, to employ those prisoners in productive activity, to try to get them interested in becoming law-abiding citizens not only after they leave prison but while they're in prison, that they obey the rules as well, and I work on that every day.
Well, is Procunier and our gun and what he's been sending on as far as you're concerned?
All I'm asking them to do is to keep doing what they've been doing and just hurry up.
Have you got time to check on who the one that maneuvers?
I've checked on it, yeah. Right.
Has Cindy Pryor confirmed that she'll?
Well, I don't know.
So you may have to withdraw it.
Well, that's a prerogative that she has, and I don't intend to call a special session for confirmation.
Governor, do you support Bob's legal continuing?
Yeah, I think Bob's done a good job, and I don't think that, in fact, Bob can play a very important role in trying to bring broader recognition on the part of the people in the state party to the fact that we can do a better job on the national level if they would copy more of what we do at the state level.
Governor, back to Strong's proposal, what changes did you want?
Well, I'm not going to go in there and draw it. If I were, all I'm trying to do is to see that the goals are going to be met, that there be a standard set that's very easily discernible, that there will be no fallback in reform effort, that there will be merely modifications made to improve it, not to set it back.
That your staff will be involved in the negotiation?
Yeah, it'll be a determination by the state board, and I'm sure that my staff will keep me advised on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought you were never going to get your question right. Yeah. Today we have a special treat. Dr. Sally Ride, the first American woman to fly in space, has honored us by presenting a Texas flag, which she took with her on the October 5th flight this year. Perhaps it was natural because of her competitive nature that Sally would gain a place in history as the first American woman to go into space. As a youngster, she proved to be a natural athlete, spent most of her time playing baseball and football in the neighborhood. She was natural at tennis, taking it up at age 10 and gaining national ranking of 18th within a few years on the junior circuit. Wimbledon champion Billie Jean King urged Sally to become a professional tennis player. Sally succumbed to the challenge of science. Completing her work on her doctoral dissertation, she began looking for a job in research physics. She came across a a campus newspaper announcement that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration was looking for young scientists to serve as mission specialists on space flights. She immediately applied, along with 8,000 others, and about 1,000 of them women. And I know that you know the rest of the story. So we're proud today to accept this flag. Sally, if you would. You do plan on giving that to us. And she says it really did go into space with her, and I was curious, that's not just a phony certificate.
No, we promised that. And in fact, we've got a certificate that sort of proves it. It says this flag was flown aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger, STS-40NG, which carried the first crew of 7 astronauts into space October 5th through 13th, 1984.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you giving me the flag to carry.
Thank you very much, Sally. And because of your experience in aeronautics as well, I think that it's only appropriate that we make you an admiral in the Texas Navy. Delighted to have a new admiral in our Navy.
Thank you very much. That was something that I have to admit I didn't expect. And I also have to admit it was easy to succumb to science with a forehand like mine.
Thank you again, Sally, very much. She also serves on our Science and Technology Council, and I don't know that any one particular council I've created that has any greater importance to the long-term future of our state than that, and I want to thank you again for your time and service on that council. Today I'm also pleased to announce that the Governor's Office is targeting another $2 million to help dislocated workers in the Golden Triangle area of Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange. As you're well aware, this area has been particularly hard hit by layoffs in the oil and gas and petrochemical industries. Since 1981, oil and chemical refining firms in this part of southeast Texas have experienced increasing difficulties in marketing conditions. As a result of reduced worldwide demand for oil, expanded foreign refining capacity, and technological changes in the industry. Between June of 1981 and September of 1984, the Golden Triangle lost 12,000 manufacturing jobs, the large majority in the oil and chemical industry. And these large layoffs have triggered significant layoffs in other industries. Since taking office, I have targeted dollars and other forms of assistance to address the problems of dislocated workers throughout the state, paying particularly close attention to the needs in the Golden Triangle area. Even before the most recent Texaco layoffs, the Governor's Office targeted $1.8 million to the Golden Triangle area out of a total of $11 million in federal job training funds that were earmarked for dislocated workers in Texas. Job retraining programs already in place in southeast Texas have demonstrated that they can and do work. For example, laid-off refinery workers have been retrained and placed in new jobs as cable TV installers earning $5 a quarter an hour, as laboratory technicians earning over $7 a quarter an hour, and as chemical process operators earning over $11.50 an hour. There's no denying that one of the most potentially devastating blows of the Golden Triangle economy came on September the 6th when Texaco announced the layoff of 1,400 workers at its Port Arthur facility. What happened next could well serve as a model for how a high degree of labor management cooperation and a well-developed private and public partnership can help workers in whole communities adjust to layoffs and find new places in an economy less reliant on the oil and gas industry. After labor and management had negotiated a severance package for the laid-off Texaco workers, I directed my staff and representatives of several state agencies to meet with Texaco officials, representatives of the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union, Golden Triangle elected officials, and others to discuss ways to revitalize the local economy. Today, I'm pleased to announce that I've earmarked an additional $2 million in Federal Job Training Partnership Act funds to aid Texaco and other dislocated workers in the Golden Triangle. Based on the recommendations of the State Job Training Council, chaired by former Labor Secretary Ray Marshall, and Ray's here, thank you, Ray, I'm targeting these funds for 4 major initiatives. We will expand the existing job search and retraining project for dislocated workers that is currently being operated by the Program for Human Services in Beaumont. We will also expand another program, the Golden Triangle Employee Assistance Center, which provides job search, counseling, and referral services for dislocated workers in Beaumont. This program is jointly operated by the Human Resources Development Institute and the Texas Employment Commission. Using job training money, the John Gray Institute of Lamar University will establish a new small business entrepreneurial training project in the Beaumont-Port Arthur area. This project will assist a small number of displaced workers in setting up and operating their own small businesses. We will also expand funding for the new Bid Resource Center in Beaumont, which assists small businesses in applying for and negotiating federal and state contracts to bring new jobs in the area. I've also directed the Texas Employment Commission to open an office in Port Arthur to process the unemployment insurance claims. If it's more important, go ahead and take that call. The unemployment insurance claims for Texaco workers. I expect these combined programs will help an estimated 1,000 displaced workers and retraining for new jobs. Before taking your questions, I'd like to welcome two people who played instrumental roles in developing strategies to revitalize the Golden Triangle. One is Ray Marshall, which I mentioned earlier. Ray, if you would come forward. And Richard Moyer, if he's here. Richard's not here. He's working on the roads. That's all right. I'll be pleased to respond to any questions you might have on these or any other subject.
Where does that money come from?
Where'd it come from, right?
It comes from the Job Training Partnership Act, which succeeded CEDAW in 1983.
When you say that the money that you've already sent down to the Golden Triangle area has worked well, what sort of criteria do you use to write it?
Well, some of those people that were directly displaced have now been retrained and employed. So that's the bottom line of how well these programs work. And that's the difficult task that we have before us in those areas of transition. And that's what Ray Marshall is doing such a good job in trying to develop effective programs, that they're truly going to be obtaining employment, and that's the bottom line for those people who've been displaced.
Governor, you're familiar with the situation surrounding Thomas McDade, the state Texas Board of Corrections board member. Do you feel that he acted properly in going to that inmate and getting a lie detector test for him?
Well, I think that the main thing is that no person in an institution be subject to pressure to change testimony or to give false testimony, and I think that being an officer of the court as an attorney, he has an obligation to see to that ultimate fairness, that no prisoner in confinement be subjected to that type of abuse. And I think any board member should search out any instance and try to resolve it one way or the other and take appropriate action.
You don't feel like he was abusing his authority as a
I
board
don't think
member?
that he did. In fact, I think it could potentially pose a problem, but I don't think it did in this case.
You've got two other attorneys on the board. Do you think that they should also have the right to go ahead and
I think we have plenty of attorneys on the board.
A while ago, you were critical of the prison board. Are they doing a better job now as prison?
I think they are, and I think they're trying to move more swiftly. I'm still not satisfied with the speed with which they've undertaken several projects that I have on my agenda for them to undertake, but they are moving generally in the right direction.
Can you tell us what those projects are?
Oh, just improvement in the way in which we go about maintaining security in the prison, as one example.
There's obviously somewhat of a split on the board now. Are you worried about?
We'll have that all resolved here shortly.
How are you going to do that?
There'll be appointments made in February.
Are you going to fire anyone?
No,
Who's up in February 7th?
I haven't looked, but we're going to make a statewide search for finding an outstanding individual to serve in that capacity, and we'll be trying to put together, and I think you'll find a unified board.
Does that mean that Mr. Gunn?
Well, it is as far as I'm concerned.
Does that mean Mr. Gunn's going to be replaced?
I have made no final decision on any individual there, but I'll assure you we will find the finest folks in this state to provide leadership in that department.
Are you considering replacing this again?
Everyone's subject to replacement as well. Yes, sir, they're all of them.
What's the deal with them? I don't understand it. I thought you couldn't replace them until their appointment comes up.
Well, that's when it comes up.
Did both of theirs come up?
No, I don't remember the names, but I know that we have at least 3 that will be up sometime either January or February.
That would mean you would have appointees even.
Sir, I'm sorry.
You would have appointees on the board that would like to do chairman, so at least replacing Mr. Chairman. Is that a goal here?
No, I don't have any goals like that. I have a goal of putting the finest people there and getting the job done. It's the only goal I have.
But you can't actually remove either McDade
No.
or Gunn from the board itself.
No,
Have you talked to Senator-elect Pryor about Mr. Munn?
I have not. I have not.
Governor, your quest to get a Navy base in Texas, do you have any objections at all to any of those ships utilizing or having on board nuclear arms?
I'm more worried about the ones that are pointed this way than the ones that are pointed the other way.
Well, there are people, demonstrating like that to Houston area,
Do you have any concern about that too?
Not very much.
Governor, what did you think about the Supreme Court Stacey Dan decision yesterday?
I'm very concerned about it.
What concerned in what way?
Well, they may have eliminated the need for about 600 million in new bonds.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, I'm have Leslie Benitez looking at it again and making recommendations of what can be done, but it's potentially very heavy impact.
Governor, how do you feel about the new pesticide regulations and some of the charges that the Farm Bureau has made that this is going to put small farmers in Texas out of business?
Well, I think that they're under a comment period right now. I'd like to see what ultimately comes from that suggested regulation. I think there probably will be modifications.
Well, do you think there's any validity to the President of the Farm Bureau's charges?
Well, I have not had a chance to study the details of the regulation, but I think the goals are safety in the use of those insecticides. The other concern is that we not diminish our productivity and profitability as it may be for our farmers. So I think they can meet those what may be difficult, too difficult goals by listening to what the farmers have to say about these rules and making whatever accommodations are necessary to provide the safety on the one hand, profitability on the other.
Governor, Tom Walker was telling people this visit should personally urge the PUC to change their decision on valve costs for the next time.
I have not personally talked to them about that, other than to say that I am concerned about cancellation of any permit in this state, and certainly ones that have already generated a significant amount of investment on the part of those people who are holding the permit. But that's a matter that they will determine and will be their decision.
Governor, the draft water plan has already come under some attack from environmentalists concerned about protection basin estuary, agriculture interests, there's not enough there. What sort of further areas of compromise do you see along this line?
Well, I think it's been complicated a great deal by the Supreme Court decision. I don't mean that to say be critical of the decision at all. It's just that it does make more complex an already difficult situation. It may have resolved some things, and I'm not certain exactly what can be done, even legislatively or constitutional amendment-wise, to change the impacts. It's going to be a difficult case under the best of circumstances. I don't know that there's a great deal more that can be done, but the reason for the comment period now, the committee hearings in El Paso and will continue throughout the state, is to try to develop a broader base of support for the package and make changes where necessary to gain that support.
You say it looks like this decision yesterday puts the plan pretty much on hold?
Well, no, I just think it complicates it because it essentially says, as was reported in the news today, that we have already committed the water that's there, and it may be that we can build more reservoirs. The impact of that might be there. Except in some of the East Texas areas where we have such a surplus of water.
Will the Democratic governors be meeting this fall?
I think we have a meeting set in February.
In conjunction with the regular?
This fall is already over. I think we're in winter now.
What my point is there any effort to organize Democratic governors to meet after the election?
We've already been discussing some of the program changes that need to be made or we'd like to see made, and I've been talking with our people here, legislative as well as political leaders.
So what's all that mean?
Well, it doesn't mean much. I almost answered your question. Yeah, right. In Washington. How you gonna print that?
We'll find a way. I'll send you a copy.
Oh, y'all do it every day. It's this.
State college is gonna take somewhere around $200 million cut, and the colleges themselves now.
What did you say? They're revving the engines. I can't hear you.
It appears the state colleges are gonna be taking $200 million cut, and they're now talking again about tuition increase. And you told them what it would veto a resident tuition increase?
Well, I am going to review every recommendation along those lines. I've already told people that I supported an increase in tuition for non-resident students and for professional schools. I am very reluctant to put any kind of financial barrier between a Texas resident who's trying to gain educational opportunity and would have to look at the proposal to make certain that we didn't have financial barriers being built that would impair their ability to get an education.
Along similar lines, Governor, a lot of the people in the LED are turning to fee increases as one way to take care of the projected shortfall. What's the difference between a fee increase and a tax increase?
Well, the fee is for services that are received directly by the individual who pays the fee. Taxes are not necessarily a direct returning services. A lot of people that don't have children pay school taxes. I'm paying a pretty significant amount down at Spring Branch right now, and my children go here. I guess it's offset by the fact that I don't pay any here. But
is the gasoline tax a fee?
well, no, the fee I thought you were talking about was in educational areas. Well, it's a user tax. People that don't have internal combustion engines don't tend to pay that tax.
Will there be a tax increase next year?
I hope not, and I rather doubt that there will be.
Will the sales
Let me
tax?
assure you that we will not have any except as a last resort.
There seem to have been several last resorts.
Governor, will the sales tax be rounded up so that it won't be carried out to 3 decimal places?
Some people were accusing us of having a competency test there for our business community, but that's not true. I did not support that 1.8%. I thought that there was better proposals that I had laid out, but the legislature's will was expressed, and I was in no position to change it. I think that that may be something that we just have to hear more about in the legislature, but I don't think there will be any tax increase.
Where are some areas you might save some money then?
Oh, there's several areas. We've already seen the University of Texas at Austin has renegotiated natural gas contracts recently and will save $500,000 a month because of that alone. The water conservation program that they're undertaking will save a significant amount of money on just lack of waste and the fact that they'll save money on fees. The other ways that we're going to be handling travel in state agency, the way in which you work on your travel budgets, for instance, should be lower, just absolutely lower, because cost of travel has gone down since 2 years ago. Gasoline prices are lower, airfares are lower, and then I think we're going to have to be more conservative in the way we go about our travel plans. We're taking into account coordination of our travel and the way in which we go about buying airplane tickets for various agencies and using centralized travel agency in order to get the best prices. So you'll find, I think, at the conclusion of this budgetary period, that Texas government will be run better than most businesses in this country.
Governor, are you supporting the move then to repeal the 8% sales tax hike and repeal the changes in the motor vehicle registration?
Well, I would like to, I never supported the motor vehicle registration increase. I did not think that was the way in which we should necessarily go about achieving our goals of improving mobility. But, and I would support modifications if they're going to improve the way in which and diminish the impact or unfavorable impacts of those increases. And there's some ways that can be done and still yield the same approximate amount of revenue.
What about the sales tax?
I don't know that there's going to be any support for reduction there. That was the only tax I supported increasing. It was one of the major ones, that and the alcohol tobacco tax.
Governor, do you see the talk of increasing fees or imposing new fees as just a more politically palatable way to increase their revenue?
No, I don't think so. I think there's some adjustments out there that can fairly be made, such as the increase in tuition for out-of-state students. There's no reason on earth for Texans to be subsidizing the education of somebody from New Hampshire or Massachusetts. And certainly no reason for us to be subsidizing the medical training for someone who's going to be utilizing the low fees here that's going to go back and practice medicine in New Hampshire or Massachusetts.
Governor, if your office comes up with a balanced budget, or the LBB comes up
We
with a
will
balanced
come up
budget,
with a balanced budget.
and the state employees don't have that 6% pay raise that they want figured into that, does that mean that they will not be getting a pay raise?
Well, I'm very intent on trying to get the largest possible pay raise for our state employees, and we're going to exhaust every possibility to see that job done, including what we've been doing this past year in trying to hold down the cost of hospitalization insurance, trying to utilize different funding techniques in order to give incentives for the agency administrator to provide more efficient operations in his agency, and thus use those funds for state employee pay raises. And I think that gives all of our state employees an added inducement to to be conservative in the way in which they go about using state resources. It's kind of my example of using the second half of the pencil. Don't throw it away just because you have a dull point on it. Also the possibility of flowing of funds out of our travel budgets and back over into a salary structure, so that they in that way recognize that if that trip's really important enough to go on, or is it so unnecessary or marginal that they'd rather not go on the trip and use that money for salary benefits. I think those are some incentive choices that can be laid before our state agencies and let them help be more frugal in their expenditure pattern.
If it comes down to a tax increase or a pay raise,
I don't think there'll be any tax increase, and we will try our best to make sure there is a pay raise.
You don't support an emergency plan?
You know, well, if there's money available, certainly. But if it's a question of the budgetary process, I'll be talking to Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker and making that decision.
You think that another grand jury or much gonna look at this Carl Booker case?
That's obviously a determination that can be made only by the district attorney.
I've been noticing there's some work going on at your house over there, my lunchtime show. Is that just repeating remodeling or what?
No, it's not. It's a repair of the infrastructure that was ignored by the previous administration.
Is it literally falling down or what are they doing?
No, it was literally blowing up. The hot water heater and the air conditioning system was not repaired when there was remodeling done, and as a result, it was old, it was inefficient, and we were having it replaced.
That's what's exactly
Kind of the guts of the deal.
That's
Yeah.
the houses.
They had to go back in, the furnaces and all of that business. Have it replaced.
What's the bottom line?
I don't recall the precise number. I'll be
mess up the toilet?
Sir?
Is they gonna mess up the toilet?
do you call that weatherization?
Sort of.
I need a
Infrastructure
clarification.
repair. Yeah.
You were saying earlier you have a lot of attorneys on the Texas Department of Corrections board. Do you feel like it's proper for them to go and try and get these lie detector tests for clients that they have with
No, I don't think that's proper at all. I don't want to leave that impression. What I do think is that there's no intimidation of any of those people over there to change testimony or to create crimes that didn't exist. And anybody in law enforcement that would do that should be removed from that activity.
TDC auditors estimate it costs about $100 for a lie detector test. Do you feel like in this case Fulbright and Jaworski should reimburse the state $100 for that
Well,
lie detector test?
I'm not going to go into any of those details because, frankly, they were trying. I think the purpose they were trying to accomplish was to see that no prisoner was going to be suborning perjury, and I think that that's important that we not have that occur of any prisoner. If there is any expense, I'm sure it'll be reimbursed. Thank y'all. Have a nice weekend.
Where's that money for the transfer?
Sir?
For the expansion work on transfer in?
It's not being transferred from anywhere. Ordinary